This is the primal scream of a dying regime.
Pray for our enemies, because we're going medieval on these people. You're just not got a free shot on all these networks lying about the people. The people have had a belly full of it. I know you don't like hearing that. I know you try to do everything in the world to stop that, but you're not going to stop it. It's going to happen.
And where do people like that go to share the big lie? MAGA media. I wish in my soul, I wish that any of these people had a conscience.
Ask yourself, what is my task and what is my purpose? If that answer is to save my country, this country will be saved.
War Room. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Okay, Monday, 3 February, year of Lord 2025, in the House, Mike Davis, fresh from coming off of Pennsylvania Avenue. A bunch of things. Number one, tell me about just the whole process, the way it's rolling, USAID, FBI. You've seen this. It's days of thunder. And like in any fourth turning, all of a sudden you're having people that people never heard of before are becoming rock stars. Emil Bove being one of them. Walk me through first the FBI, because there's a little resistance today. Driz, the interim guy, I think they're saying they're not going to cooperate. There's other guys not going to cooperate. Where do we stand with FBI first, USAID, and anything else in this kind of deconstruction of the deep state?
Well, I think what the Democrats are learning is they made a very big mistake stealing the election in 2020, because we've had President Trump, when he ran in 2016, he had never run for office. He had never served in government in any capacity. His first job serving as a politician in government was as the president of the United States, and he did a lot of great things in his first term. But he made mistakes, including on personnel. And so he had 4 years in the White House. He had 4 years in Mar-a-Lago after the White House to reflect. And now he's come back to the White House.
And plus people like Project 2025, Stephen Miller's American First Law, Brooke Rollins' American First Policy Institute, CRA under Mark Paoletta, and our favorite OMB director, which we'll talk about in a second, your former client, and others to work through policy initiatives, right? Yes. Russ Vought and these guys have worked through policy initiatives and put together teams 4 years. This is what you're seeing on Days of Thunder. This just didn't happen after November 5th. This has been highly thought through and kind of coordinated for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, so President Trump, as we all saw, was ready to govern on day one, on minute one. He was ready to govern. He was signing executive orders at the Capitol after he got sworn in.
Didn't even take the parade.
Yeah,
I mean,
this guy's ready to roll, and he's governing, and he's governing every second of every day, and he is on offense so much that the Democrats they don't know how to respond. They've never seen a Republican who's actually bold, fearless, on offense, ready to go. And so they don't know how to react. I mean, we're at the level, as you said, Emil Bove, President Trump's former outside lawyer, is now the acting number 2 at the Justice Department. And Emil Bove is a savage. And he's like a political mass murderer. And he's over at the Justice Department cleaning house. And that has the deep state terrified, and they should be terrified, because, you know, when you politicize and weaponize the Justice Department, including the FBI, against President Trump and his top aides like you and Peter Navarro, who they sent to the clink, and his supporters on January 6th, who they persecuted, they're now facing accountability. You have Ed Martin in the U.S. Attorney's Office in D.C. as the
He's another one. He's Phyllis Schlafly's, the Schlafly Institute. I met him through Phyllis Schlafly. I've known Ed for years. A mild-mannered guy, a super administrator. I knew he was a lawyer. Right around the corner, he has office, and they're always doing stuff to fight for Christianity and the First Amendment about freedom of religion. They put him over as chief of staff. It's unbelievable. He and Emil Bove are like the dynamic duo. They're hitting it every day.
Yeah, I mean, the good thing about this is, like, Pam Bondi and Kash Patel are going to look like the moderate ones after Emil and Ed Martin are through. I mean, hell, they might be like going back to the days where they're begging for Mike Davis over there. I mean, again, Emil Bove and Ed Martin, they're just savages.
No, they're the viceroy that when you threaten the mainstream media of you being the viceroy, and they're this Mike Davis guy's crazy. We actually have two guys in there that are crazy.
We're able to slide in these guys who are like political serial killers.
And super nice guys. The FBI, walk the audience through, because a lot of these guys, as my producers have brought up, if you watch today on MSNBC, they're wringing their hands. A lot of these people brought in just to make it the largest criminal investigation. I mean, they onboarded this team to make sure they had the largest criminal investigation in history, and now they're paying for that.
Yeah, they had 5,000 employees of the FBI.
Stop.
5,000 employees of the FBI.
Just focus on J6.
Yes, open up 2,500 investigations on January 6th. And they act like they're proud of this. Okay, while you are going after grandmas who trespassed into the Capitol on January 6th, we are letting illegal immigrants and terrorists come into our country, and the resulting rapes and murders and other violent crime, because we have the FBI so politicized, so weaponized against Trump supporters on January 6th that they're not focusing on the real crimes. And when you have the Trump 47 Justice Department asking for a basic accounting of how many people, 5,000, how many investigations, 2,500, you have the lawfare Democrats losing their minds, because they know that what happened with this FBI, with this politicized and weaponized FBI, not only is politically unacceptable that you have 5,000 FBI employees doing 2,500 investigations on January 6th, it's also legally unacceptable. The Supreme Court back in June in the Fisher decision ruled that they were politically persecuting these Trump supporters from January 6th. And guess what? The Biden Justice Department, including the FBI, continued to do it. They doubled down.
Are we going to right now? They're going through and systematically. They had to fill out the brochure today. The questionnaire, and this is why the FBI got their back up. And a lot of guys said they're not going to do it, and they're going to fight. Of course, they're rolling guys out of the field offices right now. Are we going to have time? Are we eventually going to get to the parents groups they went after and the right to lifers? I know the guys that were at Danbury with me in prison have been released. The right to life guys. Are we also going to get into the situation of the weaponization against these other groups?
I will push every second of every day at the Article 3 project. I'll come on WarRoom every day if I have to make sure that there is accountability, because it wasn't just President Trump with this republic ending lawfare and election interference. He's a billionaire former president, and at the time a future president. It was bogus what they did to him. He had the resources to fight it. Same with you and Peter Navarro. It's bogus what they did to you guys, but you had the wherewithal to fight it. They are going after real Americans and real America, these January 6 supporters, where they destroyed their lives. These sadistic prosecutors in Washington, D.C. destroyed the lives of these January 6 protesters, destroyed the lives of their families. They targeted pro-life Christians, including putting a 75-year-old Christian in prison for praying at an abortion clinic, while this FBI gave amnesty to the much more deadly and destructive BLM and Antifa rioters. So, yeah, there's going to be accountability, and I don't give a damn if that makes the left uncomfortable. D.C.
has already, let go 30 prosecutors.
Yes.
What's the update on any more in D.C.? Why did they let go 30 prosecutors? Also, U.S. attorneys around the country, have they all left? And places like the Southern District, are they going in and cleaning out? Are they cleaning out the rat's nest that some of these big U.S. attorney offices have become?
Yeah, justice is coming. So I would say to people like Tony Gonzalez, who was the U.S. attorney down in the Southern District of Florida in Miami, who green-lighted the unprecedented, unnecessary, and unlawful home raid on President Trump to get back his Crossfire Hurricane records, to go through Melania's underwear drawer and Barron Trump's underwear drawer. I would say to Tony Gonzalez, right now you're an assistant U.S. attorney still in the Southern District of Florida. I would not be I would not be making long-term plans because I don't know what your next job's going to be.
Either Gitmo or what's the over and under? Gitmo or Rio Grande Valley, Starr County.
I think either one of them would be appropriate.
Very appropriate. USAID today, overnight, President Trump gave the authorization for Elon. I think they locked the door. 600 guys were outside cold. They've cut the money off. What is your notion of what's happening there? And other things like this are popping up. Other deep state nodes like USAID, which is a CIA cutout.
I think it's fantastic. I remember, regardless of what statutes say passed by Congress, the president has Article 2 power under the Constitution of the United States to take care that laws are faithfully executed. And when you have agencies like USAID who are actively working against the president of the United States elected by the American people, the head of the executive branch, when these agencies like USAID are pushing an anti-American agenda, it is the president's constitutional duty to put a stop to that.
I want to go back because you mentioned this now. Let's get to it. This concept, the unitary theory of the executive, and your interpretation of people working for Trump is different than Cheney's about House. What your theory of the case is that, hey, inside the executive, he's the chief executive officer of the government. He is the commander-in-chief of the uniformed services, the military, and he's the chief magistrate and chief law enforcement officer in this government, okay? You go back to the chief executive, and his point is that when he signs an executive order to kill the Green New scam and he sees that there's $300 billion there, they take this concept of impoundment, right, that Paoletta and you have been working on. That's a ceiling, right? It is a statute, but he's the chief executive. If the program is gone, which he has the ability as executive to do, and you've got this extra cash, or I guess that maybe even that's controversial, but if you stop it or slow it down, it's got cash. In the impoundment thing, since the ceiling was $300 billion, but it's there, you can reach out and get it. Where do we stand with that right now, that part of the unitary theory?
Well, that's part of the president's job under Article 2 of the Constitution is to take care that these funds are appropriately spent. So, for example, this is what got President Trump improperly impeached the first time, right? When Congress appropriates $100 billion, for example, to corrupt Ukrainian oligarchs, and the president says, we're going to hold off on sending them this money to make sure that this money is being appropriately spent, and it's in our national security interest. He has a constitutional right, a constitutional duty to do that under the Take Care Clause. And so, but as you were saying, just because Congress
hang on, but don't leave that. Ladies and gentlemen, that's why this morning we brought up Zelensky gives an interview to the Associated Press Sunday in Kiev. He says of the $178 billion, $79 billion that was supposed to come, it's actually $250 billion due, but $178. He says, I only got $77 billion. He's sitting there now saying, I only got $70. I don't know where the rest is, right? It shows you that Trump was right. The whole thing was a con and a scam, and President Trump was right. And this is a classic example where you got to go and impound the money because he's saying, hey, I'm missing $102 billion, right? And we're sitting there going, what the hell's going on here? That's a perfect example. And they impeached Trump over this very topic.
Yeah, I mean, if you have $100 billion not going to Zelensky, where the hell did it go?
Monaco, south of France, west into London.
I mean, I know there are a lot of Bidens, but geez, $100 billion to every Biden.
So you're saying, and you're prepared, Article 3 and others, you're prepared to fight this, and President Trump and the government are prepared to fight this all the way up to the Supreme Court? Because this one's going to the Supreme Court, correct?
Yeah, I mean, it will, and
it's tough to find standing, though, for guys trying to take it there, are they not?
Yeah, I mean, you'd have to show that they were actually injured.
Well, if Mike Davis, last time I looked, is a Republican, and John Thune's a Republican, will they fight Trump on this?
No, they won't.
And they're the guys who really have standing.
Yeah.
Okay, this is going to be quite interesting.
Maybe Zelensky's going to sue and say, "Where's my $100 billion?"
$102 billion. Let's go to the second point: the uniformed services. They're all saying now he doesn't have the ability to recall Milley to active duty service and have Milley go under a uniform code of military justice, a tribunal for treason, given his actions in 2020. One is the pardon. Let's put the pardon aside for a second. We'll talk about that for Milley. But they're saying Trump can't even do that. You disagree with that?
Well, did Milley accept the pardon? And that's the question.
Well, first off, the question I have is see, when Trump gave pardons, the Justice Department, because he wasn't cute about it, they executed on those pardons. It is Pam Bondi's Justice Department under Trump that has to execute the pardons. Isn't that Tom Fitton and I said that's an open question, is it not, sir?
I think we should test it. Why not?
Okay, good. Does he have the rights? If it's not pardon, does he have the rights to recall Milley to active duty and have him tried in a military tribunal?
If there's no pardon, there's no question
that
he can't be. He's a general officer. You're always a general officer when you're confirmed by the Senate as a general officer,
yes.
Right? And so remember what Milley did. This is important. I wrote a Federalist piece on this. Milley told his Chinese counterpart that Milley would give his Chinese counterpart a heads up before President Trump launched a preemptive attack on China. That is very valuable information to our enemies, and it puts American soldiers and sailors and airmen in grave danger if our enemies know we're coming. So if that's not treason, I don't know what is treason.
I agree with you 1,000%. Okay, so we're going to the third, the chief magistrate and chief law enforcement officer. Since Nixon... And since the coup on Nixon, and the coup on Nixon the CIA was involved for information. Woodward and Bernstein were involved. The FBI and Mark Felt were involved. But it was essentially Judge Sirica, the House lawyers up there on the impeachment committee, the Justice Department. They worked together. This was a legal coup just like President Trump. And since that time, they've hermetically sealed off DOJ. DOJ is its own separate island. And remember, when we first got there, it says nobody can even talk to him. In fact, the White House counsel can't talk to Sessions. You can't have any communication. Is this now settling in that he is the chief magistrate and the chief law enforcement officer, not the attorney general? The attorney general reports to the president of the United States?
That's exactly right. The American people elect a president of the United States who oversees the entire executive branch, including the Justice Department, and the FBI is part of the Justice Department.
Ladies and gentlemen, of anything we're talking about on this show, anything, even money, this topic drives this city crazy because the whole city's lawyers, right? This city's run by the big law firms and they're going back and forth. Everybody's got lawyers everywhere, general counsels, but every staff is full of lawyers. This is what drives them nuts because they've kind of been driving the deal here, right? The president really doesn't have any rhythm because everything's lawyers, etc. This thing right here, knowing that Donald Trump is the chief magistrate and the chief law enforcement officer and will use that power, actually, these people, they lose it.
Yeah, I mean, remember, as they said to us, it's not possible that Joe Biden politicized and weaponized the Justice Department because we have checks on that. We have grand juries who have to bring indictments, and we have federal judges who oversee these cases, and then we have juries who decide innocence or guilt. So they had no problem when Joe Biden and his White House politicized and weaponized every level of justice in our country, at the federal level, the state level, the local level. So they told us for 4 years it wasn't possible for the president to politicize and weaponize the justice system. I would say this President Trump has said he is not going to do that. He's going to have his attorney general and his FBI director have autonomy to make their own decisions. But the president of the United States, any president of the United States, has the absolute constitutional power under Article 2 to bring indictments if he wants to.
If Tom Fitton wanted me to bounce this one off you, he was on a week or so ago, and he says a special prosecutor ought to be named for all these things to really get into because the DOJ's got to do its own business, but it's got to be done outside. He believes that special prosecutor should not be announced by Pam Bondi or the Attorney General, that should be announced by the White House, and the special prosecutor should report to the chief magistrate. Is that too much? Do you agree with that?
I would love it. And Joe Genova, or who would we pick to do this?
Original gangster savage.
Just a savage. Another political serial killer.
Another Joe DeGenova in Victoria. If we throw them both in there, that'd be amazing.
Yes.
Let's go now to confirmations. People should know that Mike Talk about before what you did when we first got to know you. You were with Gorsuch and then Kavanaugh. You ran the process. You're very close to Grassley. Walk through what the process is and kind of how you got your sea legs in this.
Yeah, I mean, I've been working on confirmations, particularly Supreme Court confirmations, going back to Justice Alito, the Chief Justice. I clerked for Gorsuch. I ran his outside confirmation effort. I worked on Alito and Roberts' confirmation from inside the Bush 43 White House. I've worked in the Justice Department on confirmations. I've worked as the chief counsel for nominations on the Senate Judiciary Committee for confirmations, including Justice Kavanaugh's. I ran the Article 3 project to help with Justice Barrett's confirmation. So I've worked on confirmations from every angle, and 5 of the 6 Republican-appointed justices to the Supreme Court, I've worked on their confirmations. I couldn't work on Clarence Thomas's because I was too young.
Right.
But he's the best justice. Don't tell Gorsuch, my former boss, but Clarence Thomas is by far the best. But
Gorsuch is pretty close second.
Yeah, he's a good guy. He's a good guy, as long as you don't have to go work for him. But I would say this: the Article 3 project is working hand in glove with President Trump and his team at the White House and the Justice Department on these confirmations. I just got back from the Trump White House. I just met with the White House counsel's office to talk about judicial selection, U.S. attorney selection.
All these folks, you have to understand, 1,000 of the 4,000 total you get to run the government have to be Senate confirmed. 50% of the time, the United States, I call it the Human Resources Department, and the founders of the Constitution wanted that. They wanted people to go through the Senate confirmation process. The lifetime appointments of judges, but then how serious U.S. attorneys are, every federal judge, every Supreme Court justice, every U.S. attorney, right? And how many U.S. attorneys are there?
94?
94.
93, 94.
They're all confirmed by the Senate.
Yeah.
Every... you look at justice, I think there's another 15 guys that get confirmed. The confirmation process is an industry over here, and it's brutal because people understand people are policy. Personnel is policy, and that's where the Senate... Tell us how tough the grind is over there.
Well, it's brutal for Republican nominees because the Democrats play for keeps. It's not as brutal for Democrat nominees because Republicans tend to be wimps, tend to be cowards. We saw this contrast what happened with Justice Brett Kavanaugh, where they accused him of being a serial gang rapist going back into his teenage years, even though he testified he was a virgin well into his 20s. So try to put those two together. But contrast that with they put people right out of like a Marxist indoctrination camp right onto the Supreme Court from the Democrat side with Ketanji Brown Jackson. And, she's going to sail through with 10 Republican votes until the Article 3 project teamed up with Bannon's WarRoom to light them up.
She had a great turn in the musical. Was it Wicked or whatever on the Oz thing? It was bizarro.
If that whole Supreme Court thing doesn't work out, she's got a fallback position. She can go do that.
This process right here, we saw it, and what we did like the NFL Red Zone. Last week, we had those 3, and we're just cutting back and forth between the vicious questions of the Democrats and the answer. So where do we stand today on Tulsi Gabbard, Bobby Kennedy, Cash Patel? Let's take Tulsi first. Where do you think we stand in the process?
Well, I know that when President Trump nominated Pete Hegseth and Cash Patel and Tulsi Gabbard and some of the others, the very smart people in Washington said that their nominations were dead on arrival. And I said to President Trump, you send these nominations to the Senate, and the Article 3 project will work with Bannon's WarRoom, and we will get these people confirmed. And we have. And we did that with Pete Hegseth. We lit up the Senate. When people went to article3project.org and take action, we've had I'd have to get the latest numbers from Mark Lucas.
She just gave us the numbers, overall numbers, and what Natalie said from the White House. Literally, we collectively melted down the Senate's phone line. Everything they can't take anymore. It's the most they've ever had.
We've had 160,000 phone calls and emails going into home state senators. Not just Steve Bannon calling up, Macy Hirono from Hawaii, calling your home state senators, which is the most effective thing you can do. We have melted down the Senate. So they have gone from dead on arrival to make this stop after about 3 days of the War Room blowing up the Senate switchboard. So it's going very well.
Talk to the audience the difference. The Committee of Jurisdiction holds the hearing,
Yep.
and then the Committee of Jurisdiction has to vote it out to go to the Senate floor.
Yep.
Right now, we're hanging in balance on Tulsi, Bobby, and Cash, and really maybe not so much Cash. But Tulsi, it's down to maybe one vote.
Yeah.
Bobby is down to one vote.
Yeah, I mean, I think we just saw Susan Collins from Maine come out and support Tulsi
Huge.
Gabbard, which is huge.
Massive.
Tulsi will get confirmed, but it's very important that the War Room posse go to article3project.org and take action. We need to light up the Senate on both RFK Jr. and on Tulsi. It's really important. Cash as well. I think we got Cash into a good place. But like Steve said, with Tulsi, I think it's down to one vote.
On the committee.
On the committee. Maybe Todd Young from Indiana.
Yes, we've been quite focused on Mr. Young.
Mr. Young needs to understand that.
Has to get his mind right.
Yes, and I keep saying that we are giving the Senate an attitude adjustment, and that's what really gets these senators upset, and they call and say that the Article 3 project and Steve Bannon's War Room are mean and it's counterproductive, but that means we're over the target.
Isn't it pretty shocking that it takes, if you hadn't created Article 3 and we didn't have the War Room posse, how, I mean, quite frankly, just knowing you, and you got Kavanaugh done, we didn't have these things at the time.
That's the problem.
Became evident to me, hey, you got to have outside groups that can pound this thing.
This is why I started the Article 3 project, because I led the Kavanaugh confirmation from the Senate Judiciary Committee, and I remember these outside conservative groups who are supposed to be so big and bad and mean ran for the hills, right?
I was in Rome and I got a phone call, and I'm telling you, Brett Kavanaugh was 10 minutes away from getting yanked.
Yeah.
Dead in the water.
Yeah.
Right? And then a guy named Davis and some others weighed in there and say, no, just like with Gates, you can't, if you're going to show weakness like this, you're never going to get another one through. You're going to get their choices through, not your choices. You have to hunker down on these things.
Yeah, Pete Heck said, they said
like
the
Heck
same
said.
thing. They said he was dead on arrival. Yeah. We're like, no. So 3 days after we engaged with the War Room posse, he went from dead on arrival to when can he start?
I know you got a bulk. We're going to take a quick commercial break, a couple of minutes. We're going to come back. Mike Davis of Article 3, just back from the White House today, spreading cheer everywhere, as only Mike Davis can do. Johnny Kahn, his house burned down. It's nothing but ashes in the Palisades, but it's an incredible anthem of the Tea Party, American Heart. Short commercial break. If we pull it off, we're going to have Mike Davis for a few minutes on the other side. I think we're going to Greenland if we can pull that off. Short commercial break. Back in the War Room in a moment.
You went and lost your pride, but I'm American made. I got American heart. I got American faith in America's heart.
War Room. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
I know you got to bounce. Confirmations, we got people going to get up on this confirmation, particularly Tulsi, Todd Young, we got to get, and we got Bobby with Dr. Senator Cassidy. One more time, Article 3, where are they?
Article3project.org, and go to take action, article number 3project.org.
We're about to hit, in closing, I tell folks, we're getting into the part where there's going to be legal action all over. Make us smart. You were the White House counselor. Make us smart over the horizon, because we're hitting a firestorm here, because they're going to back up and say they're going to be dropping federal lawsuits everywhere. State attorneys general Letitia James, write this down, folks. She's going to be a big player because she's already thrown, and in New York, so much stuff happens in New York. The trading desk of the Federal Reserve there, the Treasury is a big component there. So much goes through the world financial capital. Make us smart as we see the massive pushback that's coming, because they're going to try to use the courts to stop Trump. Yes. What do you see?
I think this is where it is so important what we're doing with the Article 3 project teaming up with the War Room posse. We need to make sure President Trump continues to appoint even more bold and fearless judges in his second term. And this is what people need to understand. Not only do we have to have the law right, we need to make sure we have the politics right. And that's what we're doing. For example, I just did an opinion piece today in the Federalist on birthright citizenship. That's going to be a big issue.
Tell me about that.
So
President Trump's smart about going down this path, right?
Yes, very much so. And this is where We need to change the politics on this issue. People think that if you're born in the United States, you automatically get birthright citizenship.
Well, they tell me that on MSNBC every night.
Yeah, and that is not how the Constitution is supposed to work. That's
because about jurisdiction.
Correct. The jurisdiction of the United States.
The jurisdiction of your parents.
That's
right?
correct.
What does that mean?
So here's the deal: if you are,
because they never mention that phrase. That's the phrase that comes right after.
So the 14th Amendment, the birthright citizenship part of the 14th Amendment was enacted to overturn the Supreme Court's decision in Dred Scott. Right, is to give freed slaves citizenship and children.
And in the middle, we kind of had a war about that. Right?
Yes. Yeah.
So kind of had a war.
That part's resolved, right? So we got that fixed. We have a Supreme Court case from about 100 years ago, Chinese exclusion case, where if you are a lawful permanent resident of the United States, you've shown loyalty to the United States and you intend to stay in the United States permanently, then your kids get birthright citizenship under the Supreme Court precedent. But the issue is that you do not have birthright citizenship for example, foreign ambassadors when they come to the United States and have kids. You do not have birthright citizenship if you are invading America. So if you have illegal immigrants invading the United States, why the hell should their kids get rewarded with birthright citizenship? They shouldn't, right? And that is important. Subject to the jurisdiction of the United States is part of the 14th Amendment. If you are an illegal immigrant who has invaded our country, for example, if you're a vicious Venezuelan gang member or you're a Mexican cartel member and you have a kid in the United States, should that kid have birthright citizenship? Hell no. And this needs to get resolved by the Supreme Court.
He signed an executive order. I know you worked on it. There's lawsuits all over. People going nuts on the left. What's the process actually? Because this is one the Supreme Court's going to have to rule on. What's the process? How many years? Do we have to try to pass a statute, or does the executive order suffice for that to initiate this that it goes back to the court system? Because you do agree the Supreme Court has to make a decision here?
Yeah, the Supreme Court has to make a decision. Remember, the president of the United States has to make sure that everything that he's doing and his executive branch is doing is lawful. It's constitutional. He has to make an independent assessment, and that's what he's doing with his executive order. He's telling federal agencies that, no, we should not just give birthright citizenship, for example, to foreign invaders who are having children in the United States.
The lawsuits are coming. We don't have to do anything else. This plays out not this session, next year in the Supreme Court, or later.
It could come up sooner than that, because you could see liberal courts around the country issuing injunctions, and then this comes up on the emergency docket to the Supreme Court pretty fast. And I'll tell you what, this is where, as we were discussing earlier, not only do we have to have the law right, we have to have the politics right. And that's why I did this Federalist piece today. This is why we're really ramping up this discussion, because we're going to lose our sovereignty as a nation if we let illegal immigrants flood into our country and get the gift of citizenship.
So, Grace, if you can put that article up, Mike Davis's in the Federalist. Federalist is a fantastic site, got great articles. Judges, did we do what Elizabeth Warren sounded the toxins at about midnight on the 5th, before the 6th, and she says, everybody back to D.C., we've lost this thing, we now have to stop, we now have to push through as many judges. Schumer's kind of been resting on his laurels. Did we do a good enough job then in stopping them from getting as many judges as they possibly could get?
No, we didn't. We should have just grinded the Senate to a halt.
We did not.
We did not, because Senate Republicans...
Mitch McConnell, who's been pretty good about this, just didn't do it, or the rest of the Senate just didn't get on board?
Both. Both. You know, we let... Look, during President...
And he's been good. Look, we're the biggest critics in the world. But on judges, McConnell's always been on point, right?
He was very good on judges in President Trump's first term, and I worked very closely with him on judges as the chief counsel for nominations on the Senate Judiciary Committee for Chairman Chuck Grassley. I had to work with McConnell and we worked very well on judges. We broke every piece of China in the Senate. We set up a conveyor belt, and we confirmed a near-record number
Why
of
did
Trump
we
judges.
fail in this effort to stop as many judges? They got a dozen or so in. We could have stopped if we had grinded this out. Why was that?
Because Senate Republicans are weak and stupid, and unless you keep constant pressure on them, they're going to revert to being weak and stupid. They want to be accepted.
Okay, so we left some on the table we could have kept off. Some of the appellates, I think we did okay. As you sit here now in February of 25 and look forward, what is, because these judges are everything, right? Lifetime appointments, the program of getting people in their 40s, mid-40s was fantastic. How does it look on federal judges right now?
Well, I mean, I would say this. President Trump's biggest and most consequential accomplishment of his first term was the appointment of Justices Gorsuch, Kavanaugh, and Barrett. Even though they'll disappoint us from time to time, we have the first constitutionalist majority on the Supreme Court in 90 years, and President Trump also transformed a majority of the critically important federal courts of appeals to Republican majority appointed for the first time in 90 years, right? And so we have the first...
And those are so important.
Critically important. They are the last stop for more than 99% of federal appeals because the Supreme Court has discretionary review. They don't have to take cases.
They take very few cases.
Yes, they take less than 100 a year.
Particularly Gorsuch is the deconstruction of the administrative state, his amazing thing on Chevron, the Chevron deference. Now that we have Elon and OMB, and this is a thing in both legislation and the executive branch, those frontline judges, federal judges, how does it look from Mike Davis's perspective as we kick off the first year of President Trump's second term?
Well, look, President Trump's judges are bold and fearless. This time we're going to have even more bold. We're going to have even more fearless judges. We have the Article 3 Project teaming up to help President Trump pick his judges.
Oh, God.
This time.
They're in meltdown over it all.
I hope
MSNBC,
they are.
The Viceroy is we're breaking news here.
I was just at the White House meeting with the White House counsel's office talking about these judges, and they will be Article 3 Project, WarRoom approved judges. We will have even more bold, even more fearless judges.
Mike Davis, your Twitter account gets a little hot later in the night. Where do people go for that?
You can go to MRD, DMIA is my Twitter, and you go to article3project.org, article3project.org. You can take action there, which is the most important thing you can do, including these cabinet picks.
Love you, brother. This guy's crazier than I am. This guy was born fighting right here, Mike Davis. Thank you so much for coming by. I know it's been a crazy day for you. So
thank you, sir.
Thank you. That's Mike Davis, Article 3 Project. I want to go to, remember Birch Gold? The end of the dollar empire. Thank you, brother. Mike Davis. Bomb Davis departing. Mike Davis, what a job he's done. Incredible. If we didn't have Article 3, I'm telling you, the whole thing would have been totally different. This is the guy that's focused on this process, focused on confirmation process, selecting judges, getting judges through, not just Supreme Court, but the front line, the federal judges, the appeals court, and understands the confirmation process. We never had that before. And now we got it, and this is why it's shaping up to be something totally different. I want to pivot, and I got Roy from the New Federal State of China. Roy, thank you so much for joining us. We had an article in the Financial Times a week ago that I want you to come on about the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party, is building one of the biggest, if not the biggest, military headquarters right there, accessible to the political elites in Beijing. At the same time that President Trump's putting a 10% tariff on them, and Xi is not happy. The war toxins are sounding of potentially Taiwan. Where is the CCP right now? Where's the Chinese Communist Party in relation to the United States, where you got Rubio's a hawk? He's down in Panama saying one belt, one road's over. The Panamanian president comes out and says one belt, one road's over. America's going to basically run the Panama Canal, so we're going to cut the Chinese Navy off. They're building a massive, like 5X Pentagon. At the same time, President Trump slapped him with 10% tariffs and told Mexico and Canada, we're going to break your economies if you don't stop the chemical warfare assault of fentanyl killing 100,000 Americans a year. Roy, what do you got for me?
Yeah, thank you, Steve, for having me. I think all of those topics are interconnected. This is unrestricted warfare and from multiple dimensions. And the CCP has been waging wars against the United States for a long time, and there were three major areas. One is currency. We saw what the CCP been doing with the BRICS and to destroy the U.S. Dollar supremacy and to form those alliance. And also the second is information war. We saw what happened with the DeepSeek, with TikTok. We're going to talk later about. And then the last is military ramp up. And now we saw what happening is the CCP is having this total war readiness against the United States. And remember, Miles Guo has been talking about this for years. In 2019, he blew the whistle on what's happening in the Western Beijing, in Phoenix Mountain, around like Xishan Mountain, all these areas in Western Beijing. There were bunkers, there were underground railways, there were foods and ammunitions and command centers. And remember, those are not just command centers from the Ministry of the National Defense. Those are nuclear command center and control centers. Those are 100 feet deep. There are like tens of thousands of people, at least we know, like hundreds of thousands actually, soldiers monitoring the devices, American civilians. And as we speak, they're still doing that. And I think this is a sign that the CCP has been preparing, and that they're already ready to wage war against the United States. And we saw Xi's health is declining. Our intelligence tells us she's just had a major surgery. And we know the story, like he had a problem with his liver and with his neck and spine. Like he used to be hit by a tractor when he was young. And that's why he's always tilting his head. And I think those are all the signs, and she knows his time is up, almost up. So that's why I think he's more motivated right now to have those military ramp ups to attack Taiwan.
You mentioned that we think the accident happened during the Cultural Revolution. She was sent out to the provinces. Just on Miles, I want to go back and do a slight reset here. Miles Guo told us in 2019, Lighthizer and Navarro, after working a year and a half with us, actually sat down and negotiated with Li He a deal that took care of the 7 original sins of kind of the Chinese Communist Party's economics, and really brought them in and fused them into the Western model, right? No more state-owned industries. Every issue they had about overcapacity, about terrible wages for Lao Beijing environment. These guys had worked with President Trump and negotiated this huge deal over 18 months. Xi and Putin had the first One Belt, One Road conference. And after that conference, Wang Qishan, and Miles was dead on, said, hey, they had a change of heart and said, hey, if we sign this deal with Trump, that's going to sublimate us to the West forever. We're not going to do that, right? With this, we've figured out what these guys want to do. Right after that, Xi declared a people's war against the United States, and this is why unrestricted warfare has ramped up. And as I keep saying on the show, the CCP is at war with the United States. They're using unrestricted warfare, economic warfare, political warfare, psychological warfare, information warfare, all of it, right? And this is why you had these massive cyber attacks, and this is why now they're although they started the military buildup a couple of years ago, the headquarters building up. This is why the assault on the U.S. dollar. This is one of the reasons President Trump is coming in with these tariffs, because he's telling them, hey, you're really the problem with the fentanyl here. It's a chemical warfare attack on the United States of America. What do you think we have to do, Roy, to raise awareness of the American people? We've been doing this now for years. It's obviously much more increased. The CCP, people know that it's the CCP and not the Chinese people. That's one of the biggest things we've been able to do, is drive a wedge between that. But for people to understand unrestricted warfare, what do you think we could do or do better?
Well, first of all, we need to let people understand that the CCP consists of a group of people, a group of gangs, right? Like only less than 100 people with like 5 red dynastic families that control 99.9% of the resources, of the money, of the power of China. And they are not the legitimate government of the Chinese people. And the Chinese people detest the regime. As long as the United States stop the support and decouple from the CCP militarily, financially, and technologically, I think the Chinese people it's gonna implode on itself. And I think you talk about the federal democratic republic, it's gonna be established. and we're going to bring the freedom to the Chinese people. And people need to understand they are not the legitimate representation of the Chinese people, and they're not working in the best interest of Chinese people. A lot of people are talking about President Trump being working on the best interest of the American people, but not the CCP. CCP working for themselves. They want to extend and keep their bloodline. Those princelings, they're living those luxurious lives. They detest the Chinese people. They see them as slaves, and we need to make this very clear to understand. Like we don't need to go to a foreign war and go to war with Taiwan, with China. We just need to decouple from them.
We got about 2 minutes. Got to ask you about DeepSeek. Is this a Chinese Communist Party? Is this a CCP psyop and part of the information war, or is this a Sputnik moment for the United States? Where do you come down on this? Is this real, or are they gaming us to follow this in a different direction, sir?
Well, first of all, I think this is real. But I think this is way worse, 100 times more worse than a Sputnik moment. We don't have another 15 years, 20 years, and this is not like a Cold War competition or technological competition. This is information warfare. I'll give you another piece of intelligence, Steve. Like this DeepSeek company, the CEO of DeepSeek, Liang Wenfeng, is from the third Department of General Staff of the PLA. He's the member of the PLA, just same as the Biden's CEO, which is the parent company of TikTok. Zhang Yiming, he's also the part of the PLA. He's registered. So this is the acts of the state. They illegally farm the data and the algorithms, and they distill the data on OpenAI. Had there's no OpenAI, there's no DeepSeek. There's no DeepSeek. So basically what they do is they put those smaller companies in disguise and have an information warfare against the United States. And we saw what happened with the stocks, with NVIDIA, like over $1 trillion wiped away in one day. Wow. And they have actually, where they based in is Hangzhou, they have more than 100 startups like this, backed by the CCP PLA. Wow. So I think we got to stop this. If we do not, they probably later going to announce, okay, we have GPU computing performance breakthrough, even quantum computing. Imagine if they release those, if they can just say, oh, we're gonna open source all these technologies, and if you can just think about like what's the financial disruption is going to be for the United States. We got to stop this. We're going to decouple from them.
Roy, social media, you're on Getter. In fact, you're one of the guys who help us run Getter. Where do people go to find you, sir? Because you're a font of information.
Yeah, people can go to NFIC Speaks on Getter and X, and I really encourage people to just download Getter and look through the news, the breaking columns, and Steve Bannon WarRoom. And Steve Bannon, sir, you have your personal account on there exclusively. So I really encourage people to go to Getter.
I'm putting stuff up all night. Roy, fantastic. Thank you very much for joining. Look forward to having you guys, the new federal state back. Amazing. Getter.